Hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Whoosha Wisdom. Whoosha being a nickname, if you like, of our surname Wilshire, but it's also a slang expression to describe a state of calmness and relaxation. I think that's a good goal to go for, don't you? So in these clips, I'm going to be talking about counseling related issues, and I'm going to start by talking about our emotions, and particularly negative emotions. Negative emotions are really the currency with which counselors deal, because people come in with anxiety or depression or anger or the fallout of anger. And so it is really the kind of things that we deal with. But negative emotions have negative press. Negative emotions are seen as wrong so often. We grow up in homes where we are told it's wrong to be angry or anxious. And particularly as Christians, we feel that it's wrong to be depressed. We shouldn't be depressed if we believe in Jesus. But I want to say, folks, that we are created in the image of God. And God is an emotional being. And I want to give you some examples of that, just a few. There are numerous. But let me talk about God. In Psalm 7 and verse 11, it says, God is a righteous judge, a God who expresses his wrath every day. Genesis 6 verse 6, the Lord was grieved that he had made man on the earth. His heart was filled with pain. So there he is, a God who's sad, he's grieved, and his heart is filled with pain. And then, of course, there's examples of Jesus expressing emotions. Jesus was the image of God, his Father. And the most famous example, I think, is that time when people were using the temple as a marketplace, and Jesus gets angry and he drives them out of the temple. There was another time when Jesus expressed his anger. I'll read it for you in Mark chapter 3, where Jesus says to them, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they remained silent. It was their hardness of heart. They refused to own up to the truth. Jesus looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, their refusal to acknowledge the truth. And so again, you see Jesus being angry and distressed in his heart. Another example of Jesus expressing emotion, another well-known example, is when he went to Lazarus, who had died. And he saw Lazarus' sisters who were weeping, and the people with the sisters weeping at the fact that Lazarus had died. And we read this in John chapter 11. When Jesus saw her, that's Mary, weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And Jesus wept. And so we see, again, Jesus expressing negative emotions. And we are made in God's image. God expressed emotions, negative emotions, so did Jesus, and we are made in his image. And so we have negative emotions. And here's the main point of what I want to say in this clip, folks. Emotions, negative emotions particularly, that's what we're talking about, are neutral. They're not wrong or right. They are absolutely neutral. It's what we do with the emotions that counts. I liken them to a door. A door is neutral. It's not wrong or right, but what we do with the door counts. I can close it nicely, or I can slam it. I can close it on someone's fingers. So how I handle that door does count. How I handle my emotions, my negative emotions particularly, is important. And so, but the emotions themselves are neutral. I want to give you an example from the scriptures. Again, I want to talk about King David. King David, again in the scriptures, talks about his anger. I want to read from some of the Psalms he wrote. By the way, David wrote most of the Psalms, and I think one of the reasons we enjoy the Psalms is because we can identify with the negative emotions that are expressed all the way through those Psalms. And let me give you one example in Psalm 35, where David is talking about his enemies. He says, may those who seek my life be disgraced and put to shame. May those who plot my ruin be turned back in dismay. May they be like chaff before the wind, with the angel of the Lord driving them away. May their path be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. May they fall into a pit to their ruin. I think those are angry words, don't you? And then again in Psalm 55, Surprising words. Again, a Psalm of David. He says, "Let death take my enemies by surprise. Let them go down alive to the grave, for evil finds lodging among them." And so here's David, who is obviously angry, and there are all sorts of other emotions that he expresses and other psalmists express in the Psalms. But I'm talking about King David now. So he was very angry with his enemy, and particularly King Saul, who was trying to kill him. But twice, God gave Saul into David's hands, and he had the opportunity to kill Saul. Once David and his band were hiding in a cave, and Saul came into that same cave to relieve himself, and he could have quite easily killed Saul. Another occasion when David came across the army of Saul, they were all sleeping, and David and one of his army commanders crept through those soldiers while they slept, right to where King Saul slept himself. And he took King Saul's spear and a jug of water, and he crept back through those soldiers. So the point I'm making is that David was angry. He was angry at the injustice and the unfairness of how King Saul was treating him. But twice he had an opportunity to King Saul, and he did not. In other words, while he was angry, he didn't allow that anger to control how he behaved. He was free to express his negative emotion, but he managed it in a constructive way. And so often, because we believe these negative emotions are wrong, we handle them in a destructive way. And of course, then there's negative fallout, and then that kind of proves in our mind why negative emotions are wrong. But I really do believe that if we manage these negative emotions properly, we can have a constructive outcome. These negative emotions can be used to bring change within ourselves and change in a circumstance where those circumstances are within our control. And so I want to talk about those things in future vlogs. Next time I want to talk about what we do with our emotions. There's three main dysfunctional ways of handling our emotions, and there's one constructive way, and I want to talk about that next time. So I'll see you then.